Welcome to this tutorial where we create a script for a camera to follow our player when he moves about a level. For this sample scene, I have a simple player with a player movement script attached to it and a few pieces of ground, and now I can see that I have this one long piece of ground with this camera box around it and these two other pieces of ground, but I won't be able to reach them because my camera won't move, and we need to create a script for that. So down in our assets folder, we can create a C# script and name this camera follow so that we know what the script does. And then we can open up this script in our coding editor. Once we're in our coding editor, we're going to need to get a few variables. The first one is going to be a public float, and this is going to be the speed at which the camera follows the player. We can set this to something like 0.075 f because that seemed to work. We're also going to need a public transform, and then this is going to be the transform for the player, and this is going to be the player that we'll track, or the thing that we're going to track with our camera. And then we can delete the start method because we don't need it inside of the script. And then inside the update method, we are going to have the camera moving. So first, we are going to create a vector 3, and this is going to be the position that the camera is going to follow to. And we can call this player track, and we're going to set this equal to a vector 3. And then this vector 3, it's going to get the player dot position for the x-axis, player dot position dot x. For the y-axis, it's going to get the player dot position dot y. And then for the z-axis, we're going to have -10 right here because the camera for the z-axis is on the -10, while every other game object just has 0. And if the camera went to 0 on the z-axis, then you wouldn't be able to see anything because the camera would be in front of all the game objects and it wouldn't be rendering anything. And the reason we're getting an error here is we just have to type the new in front of this. We're also going to make a vector 3, and this is going to be our velocity. And we're going to set this equal to a new vector 3, and we're going to do vector 3.0. And this is shorthanded for vector 3, and then all of the axes are 0. To get rid of that error right there, we needed to have deleted that new keyword before here. And then now we are going to set the transform dot position of this camera game object, and we're going to set this equal to a vector 3 dot smooth damp. This is a method that allows this transform to smoothly go between two transforms. And then we're getting an error here because we have to spell this actually as transform. And then inside of here is going to look for a lot of components: a vector 3, the current, a vector 3, a target, a reference for the vector 3 of the velocity, the smooth time, and the max speed. We don't need to have the max speed, but for the current, we can just put in our transform dot position. And then for the next, we're going to have the player track, because that is going to be the location that we are going to. And then next, we are going to have our current velocity and then the smooth time. So the velocity will be this vector 3 that we have here, but we need to have a reference to that, so we can type the ref before that, and then we can type in the velocity. And then finally, we're going to need the speed, so we can just type in the speed right there. We don't need a max speed right now. And for that, all of our code for this camera follow script is done. So we can go back into the Unity editor, and once we're back inside the Unity editor, we can go to our main camera game object, and we are going to drag on this camera follow script onto the main camera. It's going to look for the player. We can just drag in the player into that little spot. We can keep the speed at something like 0.075, and then we can click play to see if our game is working. Once we're in play mode, we can see that our player has dropped to the ground, and then if we move, the camera follows him. We can jump from each of these little platforms, and then we know that the camera is following because we have this little gap in between, so that we know that these are the different platforms. So we can see that the camera is following the player. If you'd like to change the speed at which the camera follows the player, you can go into the main camera game object and change the speed right here. If I want to change it to something like 0.1, that would change the camera speed so that the camera takes a lot longer to follow the player and to get back into the original position. But thank you for following along through this tutorial. If you like this tutorial, please check out our other tutorials where you can add this camera follow script to our 2D movement to have a working game of your own.